today I have to wipe the tears out of my eyes because we're coming to you after a very disappointing loss to the Minnesota Vikings on Monday night, a game that I had penciled in on the calendar as a for sure victory. Um, After I rethought that, or I considered that we would be playing Kirk Cousins on Monday night, and he is notoriously bad on Monday night, but not tonight. And we're going to get into it right now. It wasn't pretty, and it wasn't Purdy. That's for sure. It was not pretty for Purdy.
I'll
Honestly,
tell you,
I thought,
it was pretty for the Vikings.
yeah,
That's
it
it.
was pretty for Kirk Cousins. Um, I mean, here's what I'll say is like I don't think Purdy played that bad until like the final two drives where he had the two interceptions. Um, those to me were, I mean, there's no chance to win the game when you give it away. You know what I mean? It's very hard to win the game when you're losing the turnover battle, and then the other one just like sealed the deal. Like it's not going to happen, right? I know that sounds like common sense, but the defense they really let us down today. They could not stop the Vikings. Kirk Cousins had all day to throw, and he essentially had a field day with KJ Osborne and Jordan, especially Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison looked great today, had a couple touchdowns. There was one where Hawkinson also played well. There was one moment in the game, I'm glad that you mentioned Hawkinson, that I think is kind of bullshit, that I think the NFL needs to like do some investigating, like, or look at this, closer. But did you catch the moment where Joe Buck even caught Kevin O'Connell telling Hawkinson to like stay down and pretend like he's injured?
Well, I don't know if it's confirmed that he was pretending that he was injured. I understand he came back into the game relatively quickly, but I think what O'Connell was thinking in that moment is strategic, which is he noticed a player who was probably hobbling or wincing, maybe holding his calf because he was perhaps cramping, and he kept, you could see it. He was yelling at him and telling him, like, get down, because he wanted a timeout that he didn't have to spend, right, to go over a play call. Like, what should we do here, right? Get a little extra 20 to 30 seconds, maybe longer, because it's an injury timeout. It's smart. I agree that it should be something that could potentially be penalized, especially for defenses, because it is bullshit when a team's driving on you late in the game and maybe your team's out of timeouts and then your players start going down with cramps. It's like, okay, come on, But the way I looked at this one was it was one play, and they never showed us the view of Hawkinson. At least not, I didn't get to see it. Of what Hawkinson was doing. I'm assuming he was wincing and hobbling over to the sideline. Maybe not like a dramatic hobble or anything, but enough where O'Connell probably said, let's go down and let's get some extra time here to call a play, which makes sense.
I don't know. It looked like to me that, O'Connell wanted a little extra time for something, and then
they just got in the red zone.
Yeah.
On a notoriously great defense. Like it makes sense to me. I'm not saying it's fair or anything. I'm just saying if it's allowed, you should do it. You should take advantage of what is allowed. Just like the tush push, right?
And I mean, all I'm saying is that if you're not going to burn a timeout in that situation, I don't think pretending to be injured, and maybe Hawkinson was actually injured, and what you just laid out is was the reality of the situation. But I know this stuff like goes on way too often, like across football at all levels. So and I'm not complaining that that's the reason why we lost the game. That was like at the beginning of the game. Like that had minimal to like no impact on the rest of the game. But it's just one of those things where it's like, really, like, all right, if I mean, and it's going to be like impossible to prove, but they should look into that more. But going back I want to talk about Jake Moody. Jake Moody missed a field goal early on in the game, and I guess, that on the broadcast they were talking about that he was complaining or noticed that the grass, the turf at US Bank Stadium had a little bit more matte feel to it.
Mm.
And, to me, it's like, yeah, he didn't miss as many kicks as the other kicker, which is, it's kind of shocking. It's like you miss a field goal, but you weren't the worst kicker on the field that day. Um, he made it when it mattered. I do think it is time to be concerned about him though, because if he keeps missing kicks, I think it definitely played a factor in this game, because if you have those points early on, the game could play out differently. You don't have to play from as far behind as they were. You could have been playing for, you know, the go ahead touchdown a lot earlier to alleviate the pressure rather than the last desperation drive.
How many field
Or
goals did he miss?
he missed
Just
one.
one early on.
Yeah, he
So
missed
I
one,
mean,
and then I think the other kicker missed 2 field goals, if I'm not mistaken.
well, I know the other kicker missed an extra point, which
Mm,
that theoretically that would be huge. So basically, let's say let's just say Moody doesn't miss his field goal early on. You guys would have been down 2 points at the end of that game. And I texted in our group chat, when the Vikings were up 5 after the 2-minute warning, the Niners had no more timeouts, and they kicked their field goal attempt, which they missed. And they were trying to go up 8 and force a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. I texted the group chat saying I would have just gone for it. It was like 4th and 5. The negative with not getting it is I don't think the clock runs if you get a turnover. I think it stops
no, it
because you
stops.
have to. Yeah, because you have to, because the other team has to get time to go out there. But if you get that 4th down conversion, the game's over. You don't have to kick a field goal. It's over. You're going to clock it because they don't have any more timeouts. And either way, because you were up 5, your opponent had to go down and score a touchdown. The difference was if you don't get this field goal, which they didn't, a touchdown would have won the game for the Niners. Whereas if you did get the field goal, they still need a 2-point conversion, and then it's a tie, probably going to overtime. So I understood their decision, but I think a team like the Niners, with how prolific their offense is, I'm probably going for that 4th down and trying to put them out.
It was like,
But as far as
are you talking about the 4th and 6?
4th and 6, at the end of the last Vikings offensive drive, but after the 2-minute warning where they kicked the field goal and they missed, I would have gone for it because Kirk Cousins was dealing. The Niners defense was giving up all the underneath all game. Addison or
Oh,
Osborne or whoever number 4 is would have got open.
mhm.
Somebody or Hawkinson. They were all getting open. It was actually insane to watch.
Yeah,
And then as
the
far
the
as
Niners
Moody,
secondary was a problem.
yeah, yeah. And as far as Moody, if he makes that field goal early on in the game, you guys get that ball back. Theoretically, if the Vikings do the same thing and kick that field goal and miss, you guys get that ball back down 2. So Purdy would have done enough, I think, by the yardage, at the end to get a game-winning field goal. Or at the very
Mhm.
least, Purdy isn't he isn't forcing passes and
Pressured.
then eventually getting picked off. It's more of you can run the ball a little bit maybe, and maybe you don't run the ball too much, but you can do.
The playbook
You don't have to force
expands
it.
when you're not limited.
Yeah, yeah,
And
exactly.
and speaking of limitations, I just want to talk about how one thing I notice about this the Niners offense, Purdy doesn't he tends to throw a lot over the middle, and I think defensive lines have sort of picked up on that. And the Niners are one of the only teams that I see struggle with this problem consistently of defensive linemen batting balls down. Like it's been like that since like we had Garoppolo. It was a problem with Trey Lance. It was a problem, it's a problem with Purdy. Um, and I think that the defenses are picking up on the tendencies that Purdy doesn't throw outside the numbers very, very often. You know,
Mm.
I when I think about Purdy, when he throws outside the numbers, he rolls out of the pocket and is able to, makes it an easier throw, right? He's not like Justin Herbert to where maybe Herbert's a bad example because he's losing a lot of football games right now too and making a lot of mistakes. But he's not, one of the elite quarterbacks who is stretching the field. And that's not to say that before the turnovers, Purdy was playing bad. No, Purdy. I don't think Purdy was the reason why the game was that close. He was actually playing really well, and the defense could just not stop a leaky faucet. And uh, it's one thing to look at in terms of like the future of like in the grand scheme of things, because people talked about this is tonight was Kirk Cousins' audition, his live interview for the Niners quarterback position possibly next year. And you know it sounds ridiculous because we have Purdy now, but if Purdy has a couple more games where he throws a turnover late and Shanahan can't trust him, I don't know if Shanahan is going to make the mistake that he made with Garoppolo and invest in Purdy long term if he doesn't trust him. And I think Shanahan trusts a guy like Kirk Cousins. And not to say that Kirk Cousins is like the best quarterback in the NFL, but like, he's I think he played better than Purdy did tonight. And he had better blocking. The Niners pass rush, I mean, they got to get more pressure. It was ridiculous. Like, Kirk Cousins, I thought for sure he was going to get sacked on one play. I thought he was sacked, and then he just escapes and then throws it to was it you're muted, I think. But what was the guy's
Addison.
name? No, the other guy, number 4.
Yeah, I don't know his name.
He was one of the backups. But and then I think the Niners got a penalty too, like for defensive holding on Isaiah Oliver. And it was just a bad game across the board. Steve Wilkes so far has looked like the worst defensive coordinator the Niners have had in the past couple of years. And if things don't work out with the Jets and Robert Saleh, I would highly consider thinking about bringing him back. And by the way, I see you guys in the comments. I'll get to your comments pretty soon. But I don't know if this defense just needs a guy on the field who hypes them up and has them play with more intensity. But the past 2 weeks, like I've noticed the lack of intensity there. There used to be, they used to pan to D'Amico Ryans and Robert Saleh on the sideline, getting fired up after a big play, and you just don't get that now. And then the defensive line, Eric Armstead has been non-existent for a couple years now. I'm not sure. I understand why they paid him at the time, but I don't agree with keeping him over DeForest Buckner. And then you traded Buckner for the pick that you used on Kinlaw, and Kinlaw hasn't been producing. Kinlaw has improved over the past couple years, but he's not giving you what you thought you were getting. And then and maybe it's not necessarily a knock on Kinlaw. He didn't choose to be drafted that high, and I know I always return to that these players don't choose the way that they're evaluated by the teams. uh, Nick Bosa hasn't had a great season so far. And I mean, let me just talk about Nick Bosa for a minute. I feel like this is going to be a down season overall from Nick Bosa. I don't know if he's going to be able to flip that switch and turn it on. I really expect that, or what I really think happened is the whole offseason negotiating his contract. He really, he didn't have the training camp. I feel like that was a big factor, and he probably didn't push it as hard in his workouts because if you get injured, you're not getting the bag. So he had to secure the bag before, before he really, put the pedal to the metal. It, I don't know if there's been a sack this season. I've seen him hit the quarterback a couple times, and I know that he does draw attention away from, they have to double team him and everything. But the week before, we saw him get neutralized by rookie DeJuan Jones, right? And like Brian Baldinger said, they didn't put any training wheels. You know, it was just straight up like one on one, and Jones was getting the best of Bosa. So I think that he didn't prepare the way he needed to this offseason. And he was the one player that everyone, including myself, said, "Oh, he's the one player that you don't have to worry about. He's going to come in shape." But it's not translating on the field. And maybe it will later down the line in the season. But I really expect that next year he's going to be better. And this year is, the consequence of not having a full training camp.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't close the door on Bosa this season or anything. Like
I'm
at
not
any
closing the
point,
door.
yeah,
I'm
I
just
just think at
predicting
any
it.
point he can get hot. I mean, look at Khalil Mack. Like if you look at the top 5 sack leaders this season, it's like T.J. Watt and Danielle Hunter from the Vikings, and then it's Khalil Mack and like 2 other guys who have like 6 or 7 or 8 sacks. Mack got 6 of them in one game, which you never expect that, but Nick Bosa is easily the type of guy that can get 3 sacks in a game 2 weeks in a row, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, he's back to form, he's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I'll tell you one thing: he's not winning Defensive Player of the Year this season because it's going to be either Myles Garrett or T.J. Watt. But I think as the season keeps progressing, Bosa will show up more and more. I think the real question is what's going on with the 49ers D-line as a whole, because they're just not getting the pressure that they usually get. I mean, they're doing really well against the run, I'd say. Like Javon Hargrave pops on the screen to me,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
No, he's playing well,
Yeah, but
but the
it
unit as a whole is not. They're not clicking together. And
yeah.
one thing you'll see is I will see Bosa get frustrated and just take any gap that he can get rather than try to win. Tr- he is taking what they're giving him, and what they're giving him is traps. Like
Mhm.
Kirk Cousins, and we saw last week with PJ Walker. I saw Nick Bosa swim to the inside, or maybe just stunt to the inside and fill in the inside gap, and the outside is wide open. And then Kirk Cousins had nobody in front of him; they were all to the left, right? And then all he has to do is slide to the right.
Right.
So it's just one of those things that we've seen in the past Bosa take over, and his struggles honestly date back to late in the season last year, where I think that he sort of slowed down on his sack trajectory. Like, he wasn't getting as many sacks as he was at the beginning of the year, or towards the end of the year, that he was at the beginning of the year.
Mhm.
So, I don't know if he's just being figured out, but elite players, in this league, you can figure them out, but they're just so good that you still can't beat them. So, I don't know if Nick Bosa's best days are behind him. I don't think so. I think
No.
he is
I
a football player that you will need by the end of the season, and he's going to rise up to the occasion, and you he is going to have an impact on big games.
yeah. I
He
think
just
he's
is
just
in a little bit of a funk.
yeah, I'd say he's just not in midseason form, which most players aren't, but guys that miss the offseason are definitely not going to be in midseason form come, week 5, 6, 7. It's going to take a little bit longer.
The
But
Niners are in so need of a bye week. It's not even funny. They need to get right. They've got a pretty tough matchup coming up this upcoming week, which we'll talk about pretty soon. But Uh, it was not only just a bad day for the Niners. It was like what made it worse was that the Eagles made like a pretty significant trade today, and the Eagles are sort of establishing themselves as probably the top dogs in the NFC. And I don't know about you, but I wouldn't feel good about the 49ers traveling back to Philadelphia. Um, I know they're going to have to in week 13, but having to do that for a playoff game, like, because Debo talked all that shit in the offseason, and, we talked about it. The theme of the show, or, we briefly touched on the whole laugh now, cry later thing. I don't know, man. I I don't think the Eagles are as strong as they were last season, but they have yet to hit their midseason stride. And maybe they can overcome the Super Bowl hangover by just, getting through each week and then just starting to play good football. And then the Niners right now, they started off so hot and now they're coming back down to earth a little bit. And I think I'm kind of coming back down to earth a little bit too, because I was like, oh man, maybe this team could be 17-0. I said that after the Cowboys game, you know, and
Right.
now I'm just like, all right, are we going to be the 1 seed? Like, I'm confident this team will still make the playoffs, but I was like, oh, I know that if they get there, Brock Purdy, he can win the Super Bowl. Now we're starting to see the bigger sample size. Defenses are sort of figuring out, tendencies, and Purdy's still able to operate the offense efficiently, but it hasn't been good or he wasn't good tonight in the clutch when we needed him.
Yeah, I mean, what I see with the Eagles, for one thing, their front office just doesn't know how to make a bad move. It feels like somehow they just stumble their way into like these perfect trades that any other team would beg for, specifically teams like the Raiders. I mean, getting Kevin Byard, if that's how you say his name, or Byard,
Byard.
um, he's one of the top 4 safeties in the league, and they got him for fucking nickels and dimes. It doesn't make sense. I mean, I guess they gave up like a somewhat young safety in Terrell Edmonds, but who cares? You know,
Honestly, Byard should just ditch the A in his name and just be
Bird.
Kevin Bird.
Spaw!
Yeah,
Yeah.
because he's on the fucking
Well,
Eagles.
and that's the other thing is he's from Philly. Like he grew up apparently being like a big Brian Dawkins fan. It's like that's the same thing for DeAndre Swift, who they traded for, and they have a receiver whose name I cannot remember because it's like a crazy name. I'm not even gonna try it, but they're from Philly. Like that, it doesn't really do much, but it helps. Like it that makes
Oh,
them.
you're talking about the tight end, Okonkwo?
No. He's on the Titans. Right? No,
Oh,
the
fuck. Yeah,
receiver
yeah, yeah. My bad.
Z-
The
Z- Zacchaeus or Ola-
Zacchaeus.
Zacchaeus. Yeah, he's from Philly too. So I mean, they got like homegrown guys and stuff. I mean, they got it all figured out. And what I see with their team now, they're getting Byard, fuck. But they're slowly progressing as the season goes on, and I can't help but feel like Jalen Hurts is almost holding back. Like he's not running the ball. He's really not. Not like last year. He's doing the tush push, which is the A game thing for them. But he's not really scrambling like he did last year. Um, he only does it when like he absolutely needs to, or when he sees something really like obvious. Otherwise, it seems like he's more focusing on passing, and sometimes it's not always working out. But I think that's them trying to keep him healthy because I don't think they enjoyed him getting hurt and having to be out for 2 weeks or 3 weeks to end the season last year, which my fantasy team didn't like that either. I think they want him to be healthy all season and specifically ready for the playoffs when it's time for it all to matter. And that's when he can go and do his thing and win them games. But I mean, AJ Brown he just tied a record with Calvin Johnson for 5 straight weeks of 125 yards receiving. I know this isn't an Eagles show. It's just they do look like the top dog in the NFC right now, but I still think on paper the Niners have the better roster. but the quarterback might make the difference for the Eagles.
Mhm.
And now
And
getting BR, that's huge.
And I just want to further the point. Yeah, it's not an Eagles show, and the only reason why we're talking about the Eagles right now is because it almost seems like the rematch between them in the NFC Championship is a match made in heaven. Like it almost seems like destiny that they're going to end up facing each other again. I really believe it's going to happen, and it's one of those things where I feel like the only two serious teams in the NFC are the Niners and the Eagles. So you can take it however you want. As you know, if you're an Eagles fan, take it as a compliment because I think very highly of both teams. And you know, for Niner fans, you should also take it as a compliment because both these teams could win a Super Bowl this season. I think both of them are very capable of doing so.
Yeah, I think any other team in the NFC is a wild card. The main two being the Lions and the Cowboys. They are the types of teams that can go in there and play spoiler, like hardcore. Like they are two teams that could go to the Super Bowl, but I highly doubt. Um, Specifically, I doubt the Cowboys. Whereas I could see it for the Lions if they get hot right at the end of the season. I think they're the type of team that's built where they can beat any team. They just have to play. They have to execute perfectly. And then the last point about this that you made, home field advantage is going to be absolutely
Dire.
massive for the Eagles and the Niners because it's one or the other. Like I was looking at my little magnet board up there that has all the divisions uh, right here. It has each NFL division, and I was kind of ranking them based off of their current standings. And it's like the AFC, you have like the Chiefs and the Bills are like the two obvious teams, even though right now the Dolphins are actually sitting ahead of the Bills because the Bills just lost to the Patriots. And really, there were a lot of losses this weekend that were like, what the fuck? Bills losing to the Patriots, the Niners losing to the Vikings. This isn't on the same tier, but the Raiders losing to the Bears is like, dude, what? Um, the Lions getting killed by the Ravens, who are also sitting atop of their division. But, I see the Chiefs, Dolphins, Bills, Ravens as the teams that are like serious in the AFC, whereas like really I only see three in the NFC, which are the
Mhm.
Eagles, Niners, and Lions.
I don't think the Lions are on the same tier as the
That's
Niners
why
and the Eagles.
that's why I called them the wild card. But I think they're right there with the Cowboys. Their roster constructions are capable of doing it, in
Mhm.
my opinion,
And
which would be a similar feel for me of the Jaguars in the AFC.
in order for the Cowboys, in my opinion, to go to the Super Bowl or win it all, they would have to avoid the 49ers. I don't think they
Yep.
match up well with the Niners and
They would have,
improved 2 weeks
yeah.
ago. And that's history, but I'm telling you, a loss like that isn't going to drastically change in
I'll, I'll give you the
uh,
Lions and the Cowboys roads right now. It is for the Cowboys, it's to face the Eagles in the divisional round and divisional rival, you can beat them. And for the Lions to face the Niners. And I'm not saying the Lions, oh, they could just beat the Niners, but theoretically, let's just say the Lions beat the Niners, right? And then Dallas Cowboys versus Lions championship, it could go either way. Um, but yet, or of course, if the Cowboys face the Eagles in the championship, but that means somebody has to beat the Niners, and I don't know. Anyways,
mhm. um but yeah, Kyle Shanahan, get the team ready, make some adjustments. This is one of the areas where I've said that Shanahan has to improve as a head coach is making adjustments. So uh, hopefully we will see them not turn the ball over, not miss field goals, and bring better pass rushing and better coverage. Really, those are the keys. I think the linebackers played fine, uh, except for the coverage. Right? I don't recall the Vikings really being able to establish the run in this game, and they're not that kind of team. But
Did like one or two runs.
Kirk Cousins and the wide receivers and tight end were able to just dismantle the Niner defense. So Steve Wilks, that also falls on you. You have to make those adjustments as well. I'm going to get to some comments after.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I've noticed since week 1, the Niners' pass defense has been giving up chunk plays relatively often. And, right now, the Niners' offense can overcome that. And really, probably any given week, they can overcome that. But you go out there and face the Eagles, who just, forced the Dolphins to score less than 20 points. You're going to have trouble if you can allow A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and company, lace you guys up all night. It's going to be a problem.
Two things. So first is an interesting stat that I just saw. It's been like 300 or a couple hundred days since the Dolphins have beat a team over 500.
Yeah, I did notice. Yeah, I did notice that the first 5 weeks that they played was like Patriots, Panthers, and a bunch of shitty teams that are not looking good right now. So it is interesting.
The second thing, going back to the Niners, you brought up before that this defense isn't quite like 2019. And one thing I noticed that 2019 did a lot better was this team right now is a bend don't break defense where teams are going to be able to drive down the field, and really at the goal line is like when you make your stop, and you just try to limit the damage. Whereas the 2019 Niners, they were physical, they played man-to-man coverage more often than not. I felt like it was the wide 9. They didn't send a lot of pressure. They just let their pass rush do its work. They had DeForest Buckner, and they were able to really make life hell for non-mobile quarterbacks. And so they were not bend don't break. We're going to break you all game long. And I felt like they were more physical too. And so I think it's interesting to compare and contrast both those teams. But we'll see if Wilks can make the adjustment, like I said. But there were a couple plays in this game where I'm like, man, you sent a blitz at the worst time. There was the play. It might have been Addison's touchdown where I think he sent 6. And then the Vikings said, hey, we're going to send 6 on the scoreboard. And then there was another play that got called back where I believe that they sent a really big blitz on a screen play, and it was able to go for a ton of yards, get them in the red zone, but then, penalty backed them up.
Was that the double pass trick play?
I think it might've been the trick play.
It was a good play. But they got
no. It wasn't the trick play. Although there might have been a blitz on that play too. But it was. I swear it was just a screen to Madison. But you might be right. I might be thinking of the trick play. Let's get to some comments. Chicano, evening. Thank you for tuning back in. Same thing with you, Fonzie. Let's see this comment here. Chicano says, so tonight I want to pick Josh's brain. First question, how do you feel about the losses? And do you feel that they were similar defeats? How are we feeling about Moody? So, Chicano, if you can, please elaborate. Do you mean that the losses that both the Raiders and the Niners had this week? Or are you talking about the loss to the Browns? Like if the Browns...
I think it's the back-to-back Niner losses.
So, I feel like they were similar defeats. I feel like the team did not come out with the intensity that they needed, and they were both on the road. Both involved, poor play from the defense, poor play from the kicker. I'm feeling concerned about Moody. I don't know, the fact that he was able to drill the field goal at the end made me feel a little bit better about him. That he didn't continue to get in his own head the way that Brett Maher did for the Cowboys at the end of last season. What are you cooking up over there, Mike? Oh yeah, Mike's correct. So it is the Browns lost. They just don't look as confident. I don't know. I really feel like they were not up to the task last week. They essentially got bullied last weekend, and I thought it was the wake up call that they needed. But right now, we're seeing the Niners shrink when I think that they should. A Super Bowl champion team needs to respond to adversity, and the Niners still have an opportunity to do that next week against the Bengals, who have a good offense, good receivers. The Bengals offense is going to give you more problems than the Vikings. If
you're going to keep allowing the chunk yardage plays, hell yeah.
Yeah. The Niners offense needs to bring it next week. And Debo's not going to play. And then where was Ayuk? Honestly, Ayuk kind of disappeared a little bit in this game. I expected Brandon Ayuk coming into this season to really have that breakout. And he has been doing good when there's been other weapons on the field to take away attention, and where he's been able to get those one-on-ones against the corners. And it looked like him and Purdy had such good chemistry. But right now, it's not looking like either they're not on the same page, Purdy isn't looking his way, or Kyle's just calling more plays to Kittle. And, they're just McCaffrey or bust. They are slowly becoming the Carolina Panthers. I was listening to Grant Cohn. He mentioned that on his show with the coach last Friday, the idea of adding Christian McCaffrey to this offense was to add him to an already established unit and not to make him the offense. It was supposed to, make everyone around him better. But right now, it just, like I said, it's McCaffrey or nothing.
Yeah, I think, especially last season, it was definitely like that because you don't have a full off season to like.
What's up, Joel?
What's up? You don't have like a full off season to draw up plays for McCaffrey, whereas after last season you got the full off season. Shanahan did, to really think about how to utilize McCaffrey, and kind of taking it back for a second to your last topic before these comments. The difference between 2019 and this team. This offense is better than that offense, and this defense is not nearly as prolific and shut down as 2019's defense. But what I remember was the Niners owning the time of possession and shutting down the opposing offense. And it was just the ultimate winning formula. And part of owning the time of possession was running the shit out of the ball with Raheem Mostert and Elijah Mitchell and probably somebody else, probably Jeff Wilson.
Mitchell wasn't on the team in 2019. Mitchell was a rookie in 2021.
So it's probably maybe it was Rita.
No, well, he was also on the team, but Tevin Coleman.
Okay, yeah. But I don't think using McCaffrey as much as you can isn't a bad thing, because he's so efficient. You do need to mix it up and get everybody involved, which, I mean, until the Browns game, I feel like that was happening wonderfully. And that very well may come back and start working out against the Bengals. But point being, I think running the ball as much as possible for this team is not a bad thing. You know.
Mhm. Yeah. And then to further the comparison of this team versus 2019, I really felt like that team wasn't as dominant on offense. Like the defense was no joke. They were the best defense in the NFL. Uh, they the Niners offense would find ways. The whole team would find ways to win games. They would find ways to win. Whereas this season so far, through 7 weeks, just feels like, all right, we're either going to dog you or we're going to disappoint. And they've hit a slump ever since the Browns game. They started that fight, and then they couldn't back it up against the Browns defense, and now you know they're banged up. Trent Williams didn't play. Uh, Debo Samuel didn't play. McCaffrey's got the oblique, but he played through it. And honestly, I called it. Like if he's on the field, Shanahan's going to use him. Like
Yeah.
I don't know what my brother was thinking. He was like, you know what? I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to start Mitchell. And I'm like, even if McCaffrey wasn't playing, that's not a good idea because I really feel like Jordan Mason is in line to be the workhorse after that, or maybe they would split. But yeah, I would have loved to see more out of Kittle and Ayuk, honestly. And I know Pia's dad really wanted them to throw it more to Jennings, but Jennings is that player that they only seem to rely on him on third down. And I wish that he would be more consistently a part of the offense because really, you wear down defenses and you absolutely break their spirit when you have other guys stepping up and they can't just guard one or two guys, right? Whereas today the Vikings were just like, all right, we're going to focus on Ayuk and we're going to try to limit McCaffrey. And Kittle didn't step up. Brock played well until he didn't. He played really well and then he played really bad. So it's just one of those things that they have to really clean it up. And hopefully this next week they can survive going into the bye and they can get rested and go back to playing 49er football, because right now they're not playing 49er football. Chicano says, how do you guys feel about the refereeing? It's been really bad the past 2 weeks, and really like throughout the season it's been pretty bad, I would say, like all across the board, not just Niner games. And it's been bad both ways. Like I'm not saying that like the referees are just favoring the Niner opponents. Like they just been like awful in like every game. Like some game altering, plays that referees have been deciding. I mean, today there was a couple I felt like ticky-tack pass interference calls, but ultimately, do I want to blame the refs as the reason why we lost? No. It shouldn't have been that close. The defense really didn't play well. Like they couldn't guard the Vikings, and then when they did, it was pass interference. So and like I said, close calls where maybe they could call it one way or another. It is what it is. I hope the officiating improves, but what do you think, Mike?
Yeah, honestly, I haven't overly noticed bad officiating. It's probably just because I'm focusing more on Raider games, and maybe it's because I'm just I don't care quite as much right now because of the way that the Raiders are playing and my desire for like a top 3 draft pick. I'll take the bad penalties when we can get them at this point. But I haven't focused on it. It's really not quite a question for me to answer, but I've noticed a few in the past 2 Niner games. So,
both games, I felt the Niners were playing against the refs as well. I kind of felt that definitely in the Browns game, but the Browns game I felt like I would say it was bad both ways. It was more bad both ways. Like it was bad against the Browns, bad against the Niners, and then towards the end it was like I kind of felt like they were screwing the Niners a little bit.
That's how it always feels when you start getting hit with a lot of penalties at the end of the game. I think what you're saying, and I agree with. If I want to, if I'm remembering correctly, the Niners and Browns each had like 11 penalties in like the late fourth quarter. Like anytime you have a game where you have north of 10 penalties on any team, it's annoying. Even 5 penalties can be annoying. When I was watching the Eagles and the Dolphins game last night, they pointed out that the Eagles had 0 penalties in like the fourth quarter, and the Dolphins already had 10. And it's like I can only imagine how annoying that is for Dolphins fans. Although I never noticed if they were horrible calls or anything, but it's like, damn, the Eagles must just be well coached or something.
Mm-hmm. I think my issue is when they don't call something all game and then they call it like in a pivotal moment.
Yeah,
it's like you should have been making that call the entire game.
Yeah,
but going back to this, I felt like the Niners definitely were it was at the expense of the Niners more this week, in terms of the officiating. Some of them were actually penalties. And I don't know if I just didn't pay attention to more penalties that maybe should have gone against the Vikings. Oh, there was one penalty. I feel like that should have been intentional grounding on Kirk Cousins. Madison went to the right for a screen, and Kirk Cousins was right about to get sacked, threw the ball to the left, right into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And you can make the case Madison is in the area, but he was on the opposite side of the field. Yeah. I felt like that was grounding. And even Troy Aikman said, if there is you typically don't get grounding on screens, but if there were ever an intentional grounding to be called on a screen, this is the one.
Yeah.
Right. And I felt that even before Aikman said it. So I was like, where's the receiver? There's no guy lined up on the left. And maybe Madison went the wrong way, but still, you get penalized for that. You don't get the benefit of the doubt if the guy ran the wrong route. They always call it. And we always make fun of Derek Carr. We make fun of Derek Carr saying, you ran the wrong route. Like, you don't get a mulligan for running the wrong route. So, yeah. Jay Rivera said Ward was getting worked all night. Yeah, Ward and Lenore, honestly, they were both getting worked. And Isaiah Oliver also had a penalty. It was not a good day for the Niner defense. Jay, thank you, by the way, for tuning in. Fonzie says, I feel this relatively young team is missing the energy from the sidelines from the D coach. Yeah, I talked about that earlier. I wonder if the adjustment from Wilkes is I don't know if he just doesn't match the same energy that the defense normally is used to on the sideline, or I don't know if he's just calling the wrong calls, but it's obviously not translating the past 2 weeks. And really the whole season, it's not translating the way it has in the past.
The difference between Wilkes being in the booth and oh geez, why am I forgetting his name? The Jets coach,
Saleh.
Yeah, between Saleh and damn it, the Texans coach. Damn it,
DeMeco Ryans.
Between those two, like anytime the defense would get a stop, you'd see them like flexing and like yelling and like giving them all high fives and like fist bumping and stuff. It's like that fires players up for a fact.
Hey, Mike, I got to tell you, this is going to be an inside joke between you and I. But do you remember the other night when we were doing we were casting the coaches, and
yeah.
that one picture you sent me, and I was like, man, I should wait. I should wait for a bad week. I should wait for a bad week and then post. Man, I miss DeMeco Ryans.
Oh, dude. Oh, well, you have 2 bad weeks in a row, so
yeah.
You want to post it, post away.
Oh, hell no. Definitely not in 2023.
Yeah, that can't be explained.
Yeah. So sorry to the audience. You guys are gonna have to just imagine. Do you feel all the calls were legit? There were some ticky tack calls, like I said. Jay Rivera says, "Fire Josh." Why fire me? No, I'm just playing. Fire Josh, Riley, and Caleb 2024. I know it's a Raider comment. I got that from the Fire Josh, but yeah, I don't know about Caleb Williams, and then right now he's starting to come back down to earth too. It
Yeah,
really, it's funny the timing of that because it really felt like, he was like, oh, whatever team I'm drafted to, I want part ownership.
yeah, he's been really
Arrogant.
he seems very arrogant and also extremely uh full of himself. I saw him in a press conference, like a post practice press conference last week, and somebody asked him a question like, I wish I knew what the question was, but his first thing that he said to the question was like, well, oh, it was about somebody, I think maybe the field got stormed because he lost 2 weeks ago, and somebody was like talking shit to his face or something, and the reporter asked him a question about it. He was like, well, everybody wants to be in my shoes right now, so it doesn't shock me that a student from that school, yada yada yada, blah blah blah. I'm like, everybody wants to be in your shoes right now,
Well, no,
really?
no. I mean, I don't have an issue with what he said, really. Like, in that particular case, it's because I don't know. Did you see the clip? The fucking dude just ran on the field, got in Caleb Williams's face, started recording hit, like in selfie mode, and it was like, we beat that at, something like that, right?
Yeah, I think that's why field storming can be a little, and that's definitely why it doesn't happen in the NFL. But I just think that kind of comes with the game. I mean, a good example for me is like right now. I just saw before we started the podcast. I saw a video of a fan, a Raider fan, at the Las Vegas Aces, the WNBA team that just won another championship that Mark Davis owns. And this Raider fan is out there with a sign that says, fire Josh McDaniels or whatever it says. And Mark Davis walks by. He has no security or nothing. He just walks right by him. And the dude's just like yelling at him, like, you need to fire Josh, smarten up, blah, blah, blah. And like Mark Davis was like actually trying to talk to him and stuff, but it's like, that comes with it. Anytime the negative stuff happens, you expect the recoil, and I don't like that response from Caleb Williams. Like, he's trying to take the high road and not talk shit, but he's talking shit. He's like, everybody wants to be in my shoes. I'm so fucking cool and good, and I'm gonna be the best ever. Like, everything that he's ever said suggests that he thinks he's going to be the best ever, no questions asked. To the point where it makes me want him to fail. So, but not if he's on the Raiders. But the Raiders aren't getting the first pick. He'll probably be a Bear, or
If the
if the
Raiders aren't
Vikings.
getting the first pick, who will?
Well, I think regardless, as long as Josh McDaniels isn't fired midseason, which I don't know if he will be, they're not going to earn the first overall pick. They're going to keep trying to win. A team like the Bears, because they have two cracks at it between their pick and
The Panthers?
the Panthers, they still
Going to
haven't
be
won
the
a
number one
game.
overall.
Yeah, so it should be the Bears.
Or they're projected to be number one overall.
And the Cardinals could still sneak up there, but I mean, they have Kyler, but they could trade to Kyler. I mean, the only other teams could be like the Giants, honestly, but they just re-signed Daniel Jones.
Biggest
The
mistake.
Patriots. The Patriots. That's another team that could be the number one pick. Or the Broncos.
They just won.
If they tank. Yeah, the Broncos
Patriots
could
just
tank.
won.
Yeah. But that's all Caleb Williams. And yeah, but the past 2 weeks have not been very kind to Caleb Williams, and he's certainly falling from the heavens right now, it feels like. And we'll see how the pre-draft process goes once we get to like January.
Man, the football gods have been relentless to anybody who's been arrogant the past 2 weeks. Like Niner fans, just like an endless barrage to to about the whole Cowboys game, and the football gods were not kind with the 49ers, and they're not kind with Caleb Williams. So,
Well, I think there's definitely a conversation to be had. Um, I got a text from somebody who I won't name, essentially saying, they think that, for lack of a better term, that Kittle, fuck
shirt.
Dallas shirt was a jinx. You know, you get a little too cocky, and it's going to bite you in the ass. And you'd much rather it bite you in the ass 2 weeks in a row in the regular season than in the playoffs. But you
They
never
have
know. I mean,
they have absolutely had an emotional letdown since then. It has
yeah,
been an emotional letdown for the 49ers ever since
yeah.
then.
And I think the Niners are one of those teams, and the Eagles are like this. I think the Lions are like this. Most teams are probably like this, but the Niners, probably because they've been so good the past couple of years, they are very much like this, where their players like to talk.
Mm-hmm.
They do not shy away from talking, especially Debo on Twitter with the Lions safety. And then, he goes on
Debo's not even
podcasts.
talking about him. Debo's not even talking about him. He's like, I'm just gonna let him do his talking. He doesn't even really know me like that.
Right, but I'm just saying, like, anytime a Niner player is, like, getting into another team, like, 8 times out of 10, it's Debo. That's what, like, in the off season, if he goes on a podcast, he might talk about a team. What was it last year with right after the Eagles game? He was like, he went on that podcast, or it was this off season. He went on
Well,
that
no,
Eagles
no,
podcast
he
and
was
immediately stopped.
no. He talked smack about the Eagles after they lost, and then he went on that Eagles podcast, or the guy who likes the Eagles, and he asked
Right.
about, he's like, do you have a message to Eagles fans? And Debo's like, no, I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, and what is that? What does that look
Yeah.
like? You want to talk shit all season when you guys are winning, and then once you start losing and you get asked on a podcast, what do you want to say to Eagles fans? I'm leaving. That's pretty weak, right? So you guys can get all high and mighty when you guys are winning. I'm mostly talking about the players, but when you start losing, you better back it up. You better start getting back in gear and winning. And I'm sure they will. I'm sure they
See,
will, but it feels like a little bit of a, like, the Browns game was a reality check, but losing 2 weeks in a row is a major reality check. Like, hey, let's get back into business mode and not like show off mode,
Mhm.
Like, let's get
Yeah,
serious.
like I'm fine. I'm fine with the Niners like being all cocky and everything, but you still have to work hard to back it up. Like the season didn't end after week 5 or week 4. There's still a lot more football left to play. Um, this team still has not won a Super Bowl. They are on the verge of being, all these players being remembered as that team that shoulda, coulda, woulda. Right? They should be focused. Like their legacy is on the line. And you could say, oh well, it's not February yet. Yeah, but in order to make it to Super Bowl Sunday, it's very imperative that you get that 1 seed, so that way you have the best chance to go all the way and to win. You don't want to go on the road in the playoffs. It's tough, especially if you're going to go travel to Philadelphia. So, Niners, hopefully this serves as the wake up call. But so far, 2023 has been inconsistent because we thought we had these concerns in the preseason about them, and then they just flipped the switch in week 1, and then it was like, oh, they're fine. They hit the ground running, but so far their tendency has been inconsistent.
Yeah, and I think my last point on this is, like, I think I completely lost my words on it. Damn it. I think the better way to go about, like, being confident and dominating your opponent is more along the lines of 2019, which is through production rather than through talking shit after you go up 40 points on a team. You know, And hey,
Yeah,
I
I think
mean,
that's fair. They
going
weren't
up,
they weren't doing that in 2019. They were like more focused and like really celebrated amongst themselves rather than like starting fights and shit. And like,
yeah.
that was another thing you mentioned. After this loss, right when it was clear that they were going to lose the game, like after Purdy threw the interception, they started fighting. And what happened uh last year when they lost the NFC Championship game, they started fighting.
Hmm.
You mentioned that it makes the Niners look like sore losers, and it does. Like, I'm not disagreeing with you. So they need to knock that crap off.
Yeah. And granted, I mean, the way that the camera showed it was, interception, ball game's over. You might get that player doing the worm or whatever the hell he was doing for the Vikings.
Oh,
And then the camera cuts. I think that was earlier in the game, but still. And then the camera cuts to Niners offensive linemen fighting with Niners or Vikings defensive backs. Very easily and likely was that, Vikings defensive backs were Fortnite, emojiing on the Niners, but, you know, yeah, they were grittying or whatever the hell they were doing. And maybe the Niners didn't like it, but you guys lost. So,
yeah. To me, if you lose, and this has been true, like, from when I played, if you lose, shut the hell up. You got to be focused. There's nothing to be happy about. And if you wanted to fight in the 60-minute football game. That's when you should be fighting, in between the whistles. Don't do it after the whistles. That's when you get suspended. That's when you put the team at risk. And that's when you look the worst. That's when you have everybody praying that you lose.
yeah.
You know? I don't know.
I guess what I was trying to get at earlier is like, what do you think is more scary? A team that is winning consistently and they're talking like mad shit, and like really
Mhm.
cocky and all that, or a team that is dominating, winning consistently, and they act like that's just fucking business. Like it doesn't fucking phase them. That's all they do. You know?
Mhm.
What's more scary, honestly? Like it is a little scary to be like, fuck, I don't want to lose to them and then like have them talk shit about me afterwards. But at the same time, like when you see a team, like it's like if you're a high school team and you're not a special high school football program and you go up against like De La Salle and they just fucking steamroll you guys and don't think shit about it. Like it's just
Or
any given Friday for them. That's
or
scary. Like that's like
or
we have no chance.
or it's like Rocky going against Apollo Creed versus Rocky going against Ivan Drago. You know what I mean? Ivan Drago, quiet. I must break you. You know what I mean? None of like the smack talk in between. He's like just all business, like going to kill you. And
Right.
whereas Apollo Creed wanted to make a spectacle out of it, I want you, I want you. And then like, honestly, I just think the whole thing about it just screams insecurity. And I don't know what the Niners have to be insecure about. Just leave it on the field.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Leave it on the field. Purdy got tape now. Yeah. I mean, that's what I was worried about this entire time. That like, maybe Brock Purdy, who started 8 games last year, maybe it was just a great 8 game stretch. I think Purdy has proven that it's more than just that, but the sample size is still small, and he can still very well come back down to earth and prove to everyone why he was taken as the Mr. Irrelevant pick. So, which is why I had issue with getting rid of a guy like thou who shall not be named. But hey, on the bright side, the Niners have 3 first-round picks to trade away again, and hopefully move up to with the Bears, because I don't know if the Bears are going to take a quarterback. We can trade up and hopefully we get a guy who has played more than 17 games. Uh, well, actually, we're going to get Kirk Cousins, so we're not going to need a guy. Fonzie says Wilkes D isn't very good. It's very bend don't break. So let's see. Looking at other comments here.
I know this is gonna like sound disgusting, but his defense feels like a Raiders defense, which is
If
like bend don't break, but like also break. You know?
it feels like a New Orleans Saints defense where the offense would really carry them throughout the season with Drew Brees, and the defense was the problem, and they
Mm,
couldn't stop anything. But they had good players like Cam
yeah,
Jordan, Marshawn Lattimore. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. I would say I guess it feels like the Raiders defense, but the Niners have a better D line. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and
Uh,
better linebackers.
since the season started, we've had zero success getting to the quarterback. These guys need energy from the D coach. Chris Kosarick needs to step up during the game, coach him up. I've been giving nothing but praise to Chris Kosarick, but these guys are not getting after the quarterback. And I know he can't do it all, but I don't know the adjustment that needs to be made. But they are sending, I think the concerning part is that they're sending pressure and they still can't get there. Like they're sending multiple, like you'll have six people going after the quarterback at a time, and then you have the defensive lineman, like, all right, there's five offensive linemen, and then there's probably a tight end and or a running back uh, blocking. Typically, maybe you get the running back on a check down. So, 6v6. You're telling me Nick Bosa can't win his one-on-one? You're telling me Javon Hargrave can't win his one-on-one? You're telling me that Eric Armstead can't win his one-on-one? It's ridiculous. And hopefully, who's number 5? Randy Gregory. Hopefully, he can improve as he learns the Niners defense more. But to me, if you're playing D line, you either got it or you don't. It's less about learning; it's more about producing. So, if it's a pass, you rush the quarterback. If it's a run, you fill your gap. Right? There's not really much else. Like there's not like except for the stunts, right? But there's only so many stunts that you can run on the defensive line. Chicano says, Josh, don't be losing hope, my brother. I'm not losing hope, but I'm coming back down a little bit. You know what I mean? I'm not the whole, all right, this team could possibly be the greatest team of all time. I mean, maybe they still could be. I was like, yeah, they might be better than the 70s Dolphins. I'm over here like, maybe this team has a shot at the Super Bowl. I'm at there right now, not quite down. I'm still confident about the playoffs. Still confident about going deep in the playoffs. That's where I'm, at right now. Fonzie says, Wilkes is making the secondary the primary group on defense. We're not built like that. The last 5 seasons we've been able to get to the quarterback with 4, but now we need blitzes. No, I definitely feel that. I definitely feel that he is playing way too soft of coverage with this secondary when they've been known to be the more physical, like stop you at the line of scrimmage. Uh, in terms of the blitzes, I was looking forward to Steve Wilkes actually being able to dial up blitzes because I felt like it would give the pass rushers a little bit more production. But really, the defense, the D line hasn't been getting it done. And Wilkes tonight called blitzes on plays that really gutted the Niners. So it was just bad all around. And I like this comment by Chicano. It says, first job we should give to AI referees. Yeah, knowing the NFL, they would find a way to ruin AI too. So,
I'm sure baseball will do it first, and then at some point maybe football can do it. But I feel like that's kind of hard for football. It feels impossible actually for football.
mm-hmm.
But certain things should come down to like slow-mo replay, yada yada, but they'll get there.
Mm-hmm. How can he match the energy when he's up in the booth all game? I don't know. Probably upgrade his headset.
Yeah, start yelling at Fred Warner. Oh yeah, Fred Warner gets like a tackle for loss. Fuck yeah, Fred! Fuck yeah, this fucking ear.
Yeah, yeah. But instead, like what we get from Wilkes, like the whole game, like
Yeah,
I swear, like the whole game they show him, he's got like his play sheet. Like I swear, a fly could land on his forehead and he won't flinch. He's locked in. But it's just that the energy, it's just not there. Um, Joel says thoughts on Purdy these two games. Purdy these past two games, it's actually a great question. So Purdy has sort of done the opposite in both weeks, where Purdy against the Browns was terrible the entire game, but at least gave the team a shot to win in the end, right? Played better as the game, as it went to crunch time. Purdy this week, Purdy in tonight's game, Purdy played very well. And then, the team around, the team around Purdy just, didn't match. But at the end, when they needed Purdy to play well, he played like crap. He did not show up and he choked. So it's really the past 2 weeks has been inconsistent for Purdy. He needs to play a solid 60 minutes of football to give this team the best chance to win. And, really, if you think about it, this team has so many weapons, and the most success you've gotten out of Purdy has been by having him give it to the playmakers so he doesn't have to win the game for you. And unfortunately, that's kind of what we had to do with Garoppolo back a couple years ago. And I hope that we aren't heading towards another Garoppolo. And I hope, I'm confident Purdy is better than Jimmy. Like,
yeah,
flat out, I know Purdy is better than Jimmy. But what I don't know is if Shanahan will lose trust in Purdy and we're just going to get a change in game plan and, the Shanahan, the doghouse for his quarterbacks. You know what I mean? Because it seems like
yeah.
he just all of a sudden will not trust you.
Yeah, he seemed upset about the last interception and the game, but I also saw a lot of really good throws from Purdy tonight. I don't think he's at risk of like losing the rim. I mean, obviously not this season, but I think what could potentially start to, worry Shanahan is a horrible playoff game from Purdy.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, even these past two games, Browns game was in the rain, and this game, I just feel like the Vikings were just playing as well as they could,
And
and
they didn't
you were
even have their
missing
best
Debo.
player.
They didn't have Trent. Well, yeah, the Vikings. But the Niners were missing. Right, but also the Niners didn't have Trent Williams and Debo, so I still feel like he's gonna be fine. But
Mm-hmm. Yeah, smarten up. Yeah, I mean they do. Like, Niners need to absolutely use their brains a little bit more, when it comes to starting all these fights. Yeah, in the booth is not cutting it. Most defensive coordinators, I feel like, are in the booth. You get the guys like Dan Quinn who are on the field, Robert Saleh, D'Amico Ryans. I don't know. If I was a defensive coordinator, I've always just been used to coordinators being in the booth so they can see the whole field and then relay to the head coach. But maybe it's this. So Shanahan isn't your typical head coach. He is mainly on, focusing on the offense. And you see him throughout the game always looking at his play sheet when he should be looking at the field. It always seems like he's thinking about what he's going to call on the next drive. He's always looking at that play sheet. this is one of my big gripes with Shanahan. I don't know if he's clearly a successful head coach, right? He can win football games. He has yet to prove that he can win Super Bowls. I think he'll get there. And just a couple weeks ago, I was pretty adamant that it was going to happen this year. I he absolutely needs to improve on his game time decisions and clock management and situational awareness. I feel like he's too invested in his play calling, and it's allowing him to suffer in other areas that are important as a head coach. And maybe Wilks, typically a defensive coordinator, I would assume their headset goes to the head coach and the head coach goes to the player, but maybe it's just all one relay and they all hear it. So, it is what it is. Yeah, Fonzie, the way that this Niner team can get remembered, I wouldn't say they would go as far as like the 4 in a row Bills team when they lost 4 Super Bowls in a row. They would get remembered like the 2012 Niners. And, just a couple years ago, or it might have been last year, they had a reunion for that team. And, Harbaugh came. I don't think Kaepernick was there. But, a lot of the players like Patrick Willis, Frank Gore, I think was there, Alex Smith. Maybe Alex Smith wasn't there. But I heard that all they got was like a little golf clap when if they were Super Bowl champions, you would have gotten an ovation. Jed York did say once upon a time, we don't hang NFC championship banners. We hang Super Bowl banners. So to me, that's the bottom line. And Fonzie says that's why he blames Wilks. So we'll see if Wilks can improve next week.